Hello, everyone. We will begin shortly. Maybe let's give 1 more minute for some people to join. Yeah, I think we can start just in the interest of time to ensure that we cover as much material as possible. Let's go ahead and start. So, welcome everyone. This is a dive into Togal.GPT, which is a new feature of a Togal AI. My name is Alexander. I'm here I'm a Chief Technical Officer of Togal AI, and I'm here to present the feature and also to explain to you what is it and how we anticipate you could use it, and also give you a bit more context and vision for the future ahead. So with that, just maybe we can start with a brief outline for what I would like to cover, and then I swear there will be very little text and we'll just have a conversation. So I want to start with just in general presenting what is it that we mean by generative AI, and in construction it's very different. And we wanted to give you some sort of understanding so you can build intuitions, how to think about it. And also the next step, of course, we want to present what is it that we have inside Togal for you to use. And then we hope that will give you even more intuitions how you can apply generative AI for your day-to-day work. And we will end it with a Q&A. If we don't have enough time for a Q&A, I will stay here on this link after the webinar is finished. Feel free to chat away after it, reach out. We can have a session here afterwards, unrecorded. So that's also incoming. So with that, I think we can start. Maybe just let's first quickly cover what is it that we mean by generative AI. And I guess it's hard to not have heard about generative AI these days, but there's many different things called generative AI, and I just wanted to highlight what is it that we mean by generative AI. So you might have heard about generative AI from the perspective of like an image generation, where there are these AI tools that will able to generate any image that you would want, and you just need to give it some prompt. Here I gave it a prompt, as you can see, a realistic photo of a professional estimator working on a PDF document overloaded with the amount of tasks. Given my exposure to the to the people who are doing estimation, this is fairly accurate. And I think that's kind of already impressive how AI figured out that, there is a construction and all of that. So the way it works is that it has some relationship between the text and images, and then given the text prompt, it will generate some images. But this is one way you might have heard about generative AI. And of course, the second way is where you have purely text-to-text generative AI, where you give it some prompts as a text, and it will generate some output as a text. Here, I asked it to the ChatGPT, which made all of the fuss about generative AI, to write a poem about doing a 2D takeoff for drywall estimation. And honestly, I think this is fairly a good poem. Might be that my taste in poems is not great, but it's impressive nevertheless that the AI system is capable of doing that. So these are the two things that I would say that we mean by generative AI, when you have something that is generating or using a text to do some actions. But in construction, there was a long development about generative AI in construction, where it was a bit of a different thing. I would like to mention that this is not what we mean by generative AI in this conversation, and also I think for the future conversations. But in construction, there is lots of development ever since Gaudi about parametric design, or also generative AI design, where you design buildings using AI end-to-end, or maybe parts of the buildings are designed using AI. This is generative AI in construction, but this is a very different thing. I would like to be very clear that this is completely separate, and let's not confuse one and another. So with that out of the way, I think typically from my conversations with people, the first thing that is that they would like to know is just to dispel this mystic about what is it that generative AI is, and maybe famously, machines don't understand language and don't understand text, and yet here we are. It seems like they do. And the first thing is that people ask is that, okay, well, but how do you, what do you even feed into these systems? How does it even work? And I just would like to start from the very beginning. We would not cover, of course, the whole mathematics behind it, but just I think it's helpful to build intuitions. How does it start? What's it accepting an input, and then how does it go from there? And it's actually fairly simple, so that we don't need to discuss this for a very long time. But in a nutshell, there is some number of words, and you just give a number to every word. So in this case, we have a sentence that says, "What time is it?" with a question mark in the end. And then you just enumerate every word in the sentence. You say, "What is 1, time is 2," and so on and so forth. And then you convert this sentence in a sequence of numbers. And that's as far as it goes. Like, this is the numbers is what machines are good and good with, and they can operate with them. And the way these generative AI systems work, and the way they're trained, is that you just remove one of these tokens. For example, you remove the last one, the question mark, and you ask it to predict what do you think should be the next token. And it's very likely that the next token is a question mark. So that's one way. You can also remove something in the middle. And for example, you can remove is, and then you would say, what do you think should be in that place instead of this empty space? What time it? And question mark. And then again, it's very likely that you can learn that there should be a word is. So it sounds very simple, and that's really most of the algorithm that there is to it. Why is there so much conversation, so much hype about this simple system? And that is because of the fairly recent development. I think it's a bit more than a year ago, there was a paper published where it was discovered, and also it was proven that as you scale up these systems, the more parameters you give to them, the more text you give to them to train on, you become you notice that they become quite proficient in all of these tasks. So as the simple system, it's just fairly good enough to just understand language, but it doesn't do anything else. But then as you scale it up more and more and more, it develops these higher order tasks understanding. It can do arithmetic, it can do question and answer, it can do translation, and then it can even explain jokes to you, which is, as an engineer, always a useful skill for me. So that was a bit of a revelation. And then, of course, there was a paper and the product released with ChatGPT, which captured the imagination of many, and here we are today. But so you might say, okay, so we have these systems, large language models, ChatGPT, and so on and so forth. How does that actually relate to pre-construction, to construction industry in general? How can we use this? And all of the illustrations here, by the way, are generated by AI. And so this is an illustration about how do you think you can apply GPT and large language models for pre-construction. The main problem, if you notice, if you really think about it from the ground up perspective right now, is that even though you have these systems that are capable of thinking and these off-the-shelf solutions, the problem that they have is that they cannot think on your data. They don't have the context of your documentation. They cannot look at your floor plan. They cannot extract any information from there. And even if they could, they have an obvious limitation that they have a very narrow attention window. So ChatGPT famously has like 4,000 tokens size limitation, and other systems have their own. And so even if you were able to ingest some documentation or some documents into it, it's still not enough. You need more. So otherwise, you would just need to wait for those systems to scale up, which is why some custom built solutions are needed, which is what Togal has built in a form of Togal.CHAT. And this is what we would like to present today, and kind of explain how it works and what you can do with it. And from there, we can take some questions. So I will share my screen, but differently now. I hope this will still work. And let me see. So this is a Togal as it is now. So it's a takeoff solution where you can upload your floor plans. You can load any floor plan, and it automatically will detect for you all of the details of the floor plan. So you can have a net area. You can, of course, move it around, play around with it, maybe change it up however you want. Or you have gross areas, which are areas with the walls or whole part of the external wall. You have footprints, and of course you have linear takeoff, where you most typically you would do it for a drywall takeoff, where you would have all of these data. You don't need to draw all of these manually now. So this is the status quo. You of course have also counts, the showers, and all of that. So this is all available for you. Now with the GPT release, let me hide it really quickly. We for example, there's this project that I have here, and it's quite a complicated project. I know there's probably even more complicated projects, but I try to take one for presentation that is good enough. And typically there's like 500 pages. You have spec books, you have some other documents in there. And very often, as you remember from the very first picture, you have to do a takeoff and look up some other specification in the other document. So that all takes time. And the way it works right now for us is, let me quickly just refresh because I want to do a fresh session for you. The way it works right now for us is you can just hit a key combination in any place of Togal, and that would allow you to have a conversation with your floor plan or your drawing set or your drawing. So let's see, if I hit this key combination, you have this overlay, and you can see that you are now able to ask questions about the project or a set or a drawing if you were on a drawing. Right now, I'm not in a drawing, so that's why this is not enabled. And so, for example, the first thing I want to know, at least just to understand what is it that I have opened, I just want to understand like what is the scope of this project. And so you can type pretty much anything, and that will indirectly go. And what happens now is that, like you remember, we mentioned that there is a limit for the prompt size for the model. The GPT kind of models. And so what happens now is that we go and we fetch the most relevant information from all of the documents that you have uploaded in this set. We feed it into the GPT, and so that it's able to reason on it, and it's able to generate an answer for you. So this is the kind of thing that you just need to understand that, okay, this is the project, this is roughly what it does. And from there, you can maybe figure out, well, I don't know, maybe you're doing some takeoff and you need to understand what are the doors like. And so for that, let me quickly check. Tell me about the doors or something like that. You can imagine, like, maybe you already know a door symbol, and then you know that it's specified somewhere on a different floor, on different drawing, and it will take you time to find that specification. So you can ask about the symbol, and that will also bring you in some information. For example, maybe you, in this case, want to know what's the finish of the doors. And that would also, again, go and fetch from all of the documents that you have, give you the correct answer, and generate a response in a human readable way. Typically, you know, this is doors are probably not the best example, but you know, maybe you're doing a drywall takeoff and then you did a linear takeoff, and then you need to know what's the height of the level 1 or level 2, and we can maybe try asking that. What do you want to ask? So that it's there's, I think it's 2 floors, so there's a second floor. And then again, goes and fetches the information. So maybe for some people, it's important to point out that Togal.CHAT is using the GPT-4 system. And also, we are one of the few companies in the world who are selected to use the GPT-4 on Microsoft Azure. And so that does give us more flexibility and more guarantees on the way your data is processed. And so unlike some of the other similar maybe implementations, your data is secure within the ecosystem of Microsoft and Togal. And so here you can see the second floor height was this. And it's important to point out this is a conversation. So you have all of the context that you had from the previous questions. And here you can just say, what about the first floor? And so it infers that you're still interested about the height of the floor, and it will give you the height, hopefully, of the first floor. And you know, stuff like this is becoming possible. You can check for revisions, you can check for symbols, you can check for many more things. We hope that this is a good enough way for you to improve your workflows. But given that you know, we have this, and this is the overlay on top of Togal, it's one way to use it inside Togal. But now that you can upload all your floor plans and you can talk to them inside Togal, there is no reason for us to force you to open your laptop, to go online, to you know, open Togal and do all of those things. And so perhaps instead, what you can use, you can use some tool that's available for you all the time. And we have such a tool. So for example, we had a conversation right now inside Togal, and instead of that, you can just open your WhatsApp or any other messenger in future that you might be using. And by just sending a message, a WhatsApp message to a special account, you will receive the same kind of interaction as you just had here. So here, for example, this is a WhatsApp interaction that they had, and we can, you know, we can still do the same kind of questions. The second floor, and I don't know, we can just say, I actually don't know what it will answer. I hope this will be a good answer. But you know, you can do all of these interactions from your mobile phone, and so that unlocks a whole different world of possibilities where you are using Togal as an estimator in pre-construction, but also you can use Togal in further steps down the line after you have done pre-construction. Maybe you're on a job site, and maybe you're just monitoring how the project is going. Maybe you're a general contractor, and you want to use some of the thinking that Togal has for your benefit. And it's important to point out that the cases that I have shown, they are for pre-construction. But if you remember the graph that shows how well do the models develop their thinking as they scale, it enables a lot of very interesting scenarios. For example, let me go back to the presentation where one of the clients that we have, they are using Togal GPT as a post-construction step, and they're using it to monitor for how the construction is going. And I found this to be particularly exciting. And let me quickly share my screen again. So here you can see that the client had a hypothetical question. They uploaded all of the documentation about the construction to Togal, and they had a hypothetical question, like, for example, what would happen if this happens? And here you can see that it demonstrated multiple things from that tree that's growing. It demonstrated logic, it demonstrated arithmetic, and demonstrated like most of the other things, also, of course, language understanding. So it gave you the answer and hypothetical answer about what would have happened if this event happened. And you can imagine most of these events are unpredictable. And so given that you upload all of this information into Togal, you are able to have this little minion on your behalf so that it will help you out. So that's where we are at right now. And I would just quickly like to end this with a quick like a projection into the future, so that it's very clear that, you know, this is a very powerful model. I tried to underplay it in the beginning that, you know, this is just a bunch of numbers and you multiply a bunch of numbers, but also, of course, we understand that with scale comes a lot of functionality. So what's important to realize here, that intelligence is not actually rationality. And so, yes, these systems are very intelligent and they can do a lot of things, but it's still on you to understand what needs to be done, what makes sense, what's reasonable, what's wise thing to do. And so we're definitely not aiming for any sort of replacement or complete elimination of estimation jobs or any other similar things. What we are aiming for is for improving the productivity of estimators and ensuring that you can submit more bids, you can submit, do better estimates, more precise estimates, not miss some things and stuff like that. So this is what we are aiming to do. And this is, I think, the only logical outcome of systems like this. And we hope that you will join us on this journey. Maybe as a closing word, I would like to point out that we are only extracting as much value from these systems as people who are using them create using them. So my closing call to arms is come out wherever you are. If you're interested to play around with these systems, it's here, it's around, you can experiment with it. We are very flexible. We would like to collaborate with you. There's many more things that we know that are possible. We're only in the beginning. So we hope you join us and we go on this journey together. On that, I would like to close this and open for a Q&A. So there was a question. When asking questions to the chat, is it reading the information that Togal AI has already taken off on the job, or is it trying to pull information directly from the blueprint? That's a good question. Right now, it's reading the information. Actually, it's doing OCR on that information, which is also important to point out. And all of that information is going into the in the Togal GPT. The next step would be, of course, ingesting that information that Togal does. In current iteration, it does not, but that's the next release that is imminent. Somebody raised their hand, and I don't know what to do for that. Harley?
I should have just allowed them to talk if you guys want to try to talk. If not, please feel free to throw it in the Q&A.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
We hear you.
Okay, sorry, the chat was disabled and then I noticed there's a Q&A, but I might as well just ask my question in person. So I'm not really an expert on generative AI, but I've worked with some machine learning algorithms, and in Python, there's like a seed value that you fix so that when you're asking the same question or you're training the same model on the same data set, it's producing the same exact results. So my question is, if you ask a question twice, will you get the same answer, or will the answer be different, similar to what we see in ChatGPT?
There's also a seed here. It's called temperature of the answer, and that's a parameter that we can tweak. Honestly, we don't know what's better, so this is why we wanted to present it to you and see what you would like to see. But in general, it can be made deterministic so that the same prompt will give you the same answer all of the time. Right now, we are figuring out what that value should be. There was a question, can Togal AI learn from the responses you give and add that to the data set? In other words, if I gave a wrong answer, can you teach it to give the right answer in the future? Yes, for sure. And there is many more things that we are ingesting or we plan to be ingesting, like, for example, fire and safety regulations, the history of the projects in your company, so that you're not missing the same things that you might have missed before. All of that, yes. Currently, not now, but in imminent releases, yeah, it's already in our plans. I can also talk about the roadmap for this. It's like lots of features coming. Like, for example, we can generate documents for you based on templates and so on and so forth. Do you have a user Slack channel? Sure, yeah, we have that. We can invite you there. Maybe reach out to the organizers and we'll invite you. Oh, there's more, sorry. Does Togal.GPT have the ability to take measurements between different pieces of electrical and HVAC equipment, HVAC? Between different pieces. So if it's two different floor plans, I guess you mean, and then to measure the difference. Maybe let me answer from a different point of view. Once there is a Togal result ingested into the GPT, what you can do is you can do qualitative comparison between any two Togal results. So, for example, you can say, what's the difference between this drawing and this drawing, and only tell me about the area differences or the counts differences, or so on and so forth. That's what's possible. This one, do we take measurements between different pieces of electrical and HVAC? I want to say no, but I'm also not quite sure I understand the question. If you can elaborate. Okay, there was another question. Is there a way to control the temperature 120 to 155 to decrease hallucination? Temperature does not actually decrease hallucination. The temperature only decreases the seed. Ensures that the determinism is the same. Hallucination, though, is we are controlling hallucination by, first of all, ensuring that our prompts to the GPT always tell it to just say no if you don't know the answer. So very often you might ask something and then it will just say, I don't know. And this is what you want. You don't want it to come up and then read you some values about a number of windows from some unforeseen, unclear drawing. So temperature does not control hallucination. We have our own ways to control hallucination. But yeah, the first to admit that there is sometimes cases when it makes stuff up, and there's still need for people to double check some things. But very often you can ask it to please tell me on which drawing, on which page is this, or please only answer from the given context. And in that case, it will almost completely eliminate hallucination. Does Togal.GPT have the ability to count symbols? Yes. So the there's two ways, of course. One is that it's just natively, it is able to count symbols. For example, if you have a symbol and that symbol has some textual component to it, it will be able to count the textual components just by the limitation of GPT-4. Typically, it counts okay until 10, and after 10, it just becomes a little bit blurry. But that's why Togal AI is here, because Togal AI is all about augmenting these large language models with the models that we have. So we have counts, we are ingesting those counts into Togal.GPT, and then you can ask questions about them. So yes, definitely you can count symbols using Togal.GPT.
And if you want to grab one more easy one, Olek, but that's time for us.
Okay. Can this software be able to search and join for typical errors or missing information, like flagging certain items for humans to look at? Yes, exactly. This is the next phase of iterations that we are releasing. This is exactly what we are working on, and we hope for your collaboration so that we can iron out all the kinks, build all the proper prompts for this, and so on. So this is exactly the direction where it's going. And that's time. So I think we can close the webinar, but if you want to stay and talk about some other things, feel free to stay on this. Thank you very much. I hope this was worth the time. We are very excited about this. We hope so are you, and looking forward to talking to you as a Togal customer. Thank you so much.